Hey people!
Hello.
This is the Who Has Time for This podcast, a podcast where we delve into complex topics through the lens of our own unique perspectives. I'm Katie.
And I'm Caitlin.
And Caitlin is going to walk us through the importance of why we need more hobbies in this day and age.
Yes. I'm going to talk about hobbies, which may not sound complicated, but they are. They shouldn't be, but they are to me. And I have a hard time figuring out what my hobbies are and if I'm interesting and all that. And I feel like other people feel that way too, because they used to be just like a simple thing that you just did in your spare time or whatever. But now the way things are with where social media is every minute of our life and who decides what is cool and what's cringe and Gen Z and millennial and da-da-da-da. And I feel like hobbies has taken this weird role in the discourse for me, and I'll explain what I mean later. And then I also want to touch upon hobbies as a source for connection and community in our increasingly isolated world. And will the hobbies save us all? Are hobbies the answer to defeating the isolationism that led us to our current moment? Maybe.
Awesome.
And so we're going to dive in. This is a very cerebral topic for me, so I'm going to try to communicate as clearly as I can, but I'm going to start with a little story. So when I think of hobbies, I am reminded of my late father-in-law, who was very into the Baltimore Orioles. He was born in Maryland, right outside of Baltimore. He grew up loving baseball, loving specifically the Orioles. He played baseball in college for a little while. He was just like a baseball guy. You thought of Dave, you thought of the Orioles and baseball. And he had a hobby room in his house that was just like wall-to-wall Orioles paraphernalia and baseball cards and like an Orioles lamp and an Orioles this and that. Like, so he was a collector of Orioles things. He had other sports memorabilia, like, because we ended up inheriting all of it. So there were basketball cards and this and that, but like primarily it was all Orioles stuff and all baseball cards. And that got me thinking about hobbies are something you do in your spare time and it's like a pastime. Mm-hmm. And then I thought even more that America's favorite pastime is baseball.
Look at the parallels.
Yes. And what is America's favorite pastime, baseball? And, there's a certain sense of community, even when you're rooting for two different teams. I'm a Red Sox fan myself. A lot of people in my family are Yankees fans, so there's that whole drama going on. But you go to a baseball game, and it follows the same structure. You go, you find your seat, you get your snacks, you sit. Then there's the national anthem. You've got the mascots doing their thing. There's the seventh inning stretch. Every team has their own little quirky thing. Like the Red Sox you sing Sweet Caroline, etc. And regardless of which team you root for, which ballpark you call home, it's just like you're spending this time connecting with other people over this sport, which is it was a slow-moving sport. So you can just kind of like luxuriate in the fact that you're spending 3 hours at this baseball stadium, park, whatever, and you're just there to enjoy baseball. And sometimes you can't even really see what's going on. It's more like a vibe. Or
you choose to go up to the bar at the top because you're not really interested in baseball, like
exactly.
me, and just talk with people and
just exactly. So, and now these days people are like wanting everything to go faster. So they've implemented in recent years a clock on the pitcher's mound or like a countdown, so they can't take that long in between pitches because they're trying to make the games faster because nobody wants to sit and stay at a park for 3 hours anymore. And now when a play is in question, instead of just trusting the umps to make a call, there's instant replays that are put out on the Jumbotron for everybody to see, so it's not like a private call anymore. It's not just like we don't trust the establishment to make the right decision, so it's got to be broadcast to everybody else. So you've got these other aspects coming into play that are just trying to optimize baseball for efficiency. And I see that as an allegory for hobbies and the way that things are these days, where hobbies are meant to fill our spare time, but where is our spare time? What is our spare time? Are we just supposed to be working all the time? Boy. And so on and so forth. So I just, yeah. So that was my little like introductory story of hobbies and baseball in the hobby room.
My mind is like making all these allegory connections. Like my synapses are firing. I'm excited.
And before I get into this, I do need to talk about my own experience with hobbies, because I just recently feel like I don't have any. And I think that is a common thought these days, but then I'm also like, wait, to be honest, I don't even know what a hobby is. Like, and I say this because I'm like, it was Orange Theory a hobby? I went to Orange Theory all the time before I had children, which is a gym. And I was like, no, Orange Theory is not a hobby. I have to work out to live. So if you have to do something to live, it's not a hobby, is it? No, I think how you choose to identify yourself with your movement could be considered a hobby.
Like if you're going fencing as your exercise, that's a hobby.
Right, exactly. Running is a hobby. Well, maybe not running. Maybe it's like running races is a hobby. Yeah. Like taking it to that next level is the hobby. I don't know. It's just like, then I like thought about it way too much, and then I was like, what did I do when I was young? Well, I read. That's like literally all I did in my spare time was read Harry Potter, read Lord of the Rings. Is reading a hobby? You like have to read.
But not everyone reads.
Yeah, that's true.
I think reading's a hobby.
I think it is. I also played piano, which I totally forgot about until today. I took lessons every week for like a decade and was pretty good. So I won a talent show from it. So I totally forgot that I played piano, and that was kind of an identifying feature of much of my life. I will take a step back and say, I have 2 young children, so a lot of things that I used to do, I just haven't had time for lately, but I intend to return to them again, which speaks to another level of this. Like, there are phases in your life or seasons of your life where you don't have time for hobbies. You're just really in survival mode.
But is that sort of how most people are feeling?
Yeah, but is that how everyone's feeling? Exactly. So because...
Like, am I feeling like that because I have opened a business in the last couple of years, or is that just sort of a universal feeling?
Right, so let's take a quick step back.
Sorry if I'm getting ahead.
No, you're not. But, like, that's a good question. So what, right now, do you consider your hobbies?
I mean, so many, but I don't do them. Like, making art for myself, sewing. You know, I would like to do more, like, get back into doing, like, running races. That was always so fun. But I just don't have the energy for running, so I've been walking.
Yeah, no, that's all right. Walking is a hobby.
And even, like... I used to play guitar a lot, and I haven't in years.
Yep. So because I had started thinking about this and it like catapulted me into this like crazy spiral, I was like, maybe I need to take a step back and actually define what a hobby is and start from there. So in my research, I came across many Atlantic articles because they really delve into this, and I will just start by talking about what is a hobby, or why hobbies matter, what they are, what counts as a hobby, which we will start with the historical framing of the hobby. So we found out that hobbies followed a major shift in how Americans spend their days. So during the Industrial Revolution, the labor movement of the time advocated for reduced work hours, eventually leading to the 8-hour workday and the 5-day work week. So suddenly, people had an increase in their leisure time, and the saloons, the theaters, and the amusement parks that popped up to fill it became a threat, because in our Protestant-founded culture with its morally grounded work ethic, did not want people spending all their time just like lollygagging around and drinking and whatever. So there was like a push toward hobbies to prevent the moral depravity of cotton candy and Ferris wheels. And this is from an Atlantic article called How Hobbies Have Infiltrated American Life, written by Julie Beck. So there was a movement to like push hobbies into the mainstream after the labor movements of the Industrial Revolution. So there's many ways to think about it, but there's one prominent historian who helped define a hobby. So a hobby is defined with oxymorons. You have your productive leisure or your serious leisure, which is a term coined by Robert Stebbins. who was a professor of sociology. He classified entertainment and socializing as too passive to be considered hobbies. So, like, going to the bar is not a hobby. Yeah, going to the brewery is not a hobby. Tasting craft beer in a way that you're, like, tallying it and, like, going out of your way to be like, I'm going to try all the pumpkin beers in Connecticut. That could be a hobby in a way. But those are more just like casual leisure, going to the movies, you're just consuming something. Watching TV is not a hobby, it's passive leisure. You're just consuming something. On the other hand, if you're like doing some sort, like coordinating some sort of rewatch to produce a result, like if you have a blog where you watch Friends or something and you talk about each episode through the lens of, I don't know. That could
because you're not just watching it, you're watching it, you're analyzing it, and then you're creating a product.
Exactly. So even reading is passive leisure. So it's not a hobby according to this.
But is it passive?
But is it passive? I don't know. You're right. I don't know.
Because like reading is harder than watching TV.
Yes, that's true. So see, it's very confusing. Yeah. On the other hand, serious leisure requires effort based on special knowledge, training, or skill. And people often try to make progress and get better at it over time. So a hobby would be considered a serious leisure where you're like pursuing progress through something you love to do. So it's enriching and can bring a different kind of satisfaction than paid work or relaxation, which is also important to have. You need relaxation and you also need to work to live. Unfortunately, in this day and age, but a hobby is like that third thing that enriches your mind and your body and your creativity, but you're not paid for it, but it's not relaxing. Leisure activity in general, including hobbies, so you have your passive leisure and your productive, serious leisure, are linked to better physical and mental well-being. And is that pursuit of serious leisure a requisite for a meaningful life? Perhaps.
Well, I don't know if you talk about this. For the non-serious leisure, like watching TV or scrolling social media or something, it's like you're getting that like immediate like hit of the dopamine over and over and over, and then it kind of becomes meaningless and doesn't help. But whereas if you're creating something, it's that slower release.
Yes. With
a bigger finish that lasts longer and makes you happier.
Yep, exactly. So Ashley Embers, is that her name? Yeah.
Ashley, that's what she does talk about that, yeah.
I will link this in the show notes. She has a YouTube essay called Remember When People Were Interesting, or People Used to Be Interesting. And she talks about how the phone and the siren call of social media has replaced the time we would have spent pursuing hobbies because we're addicted to our phones and we're addicted to social media. So you find yourself spending hours a day scrolling instead of doing something else. Yeah. So that has also led to like the breakdown in people understanding a hobby and having a hobby, and now so many, especially like Gen Z, young millennials, or even me, I'm a middle millennial. I feel like I don't know what I do besides work, sleep, take care of my kids, and scroll social media. It's bad. It's a bad thing.
Well, it's just like because you said like it is linked to better mental health. And I was like, I know why.
Yeah. So you see like how all of these things are kind of like coming together at a critical moment in our timeline in general, in the world, in our country, and I'm going to argue that the hobbies will save us all if we can have this awareness and push past the isolation and loneliness that has defined a lot of everyday life for a lot of people for the past several years at least, and push through and find community and connection. Continuing on, we're going to talk about hobbies becoming the solution to not just idleness, but the existential dread that was brought on by World War II. So during that time, we had a American Journal of Insanity, which was later renamed the American Journal of Psychiatry, report where the researchers said, at present, most individuals are aware of a feeling of unrest and mild anxiety, of some degree of personal and economic insecurity, of concern regarding some member of the family or a close friend in the armed forces. So remember, this was during World War II. This was specifically in 1942, so we're coming out of the Great Depression, so personal and economic security, and we are worried for our people fighting overseas. The need for leisure and recreation was paramount. And ideally, that leisure would be constructive and intelligent to help sharpen your mind and increase your well-being. So not just simply listening to the radio, which I guess would have been like TV back then, but like using your hands and just getting your mind out of the present, because it was a terrible thing going on over in Europe. So now fast forward 50 years or however many, 60 years, I don't know, 70 years to COVID. And we're kind of having, once again, a panicked nation turning to hobbies to self-soothe productively. So think of all the sourdough bread we were baking and the doing trivia over Zoom. What else did people do during COVID?
Everyone had a hobby.
Started knitting. Everyone needed to self-soothe, but they had to do it productivly.
Except for the people who had to up their working hours.
Yeah, except for the first responders and the essential workers. But high anxiety and low employment led to a hobbies boom.
Yeah.
Well, free hobbies and low-cost hobbies, which we'll get to in a minute. So basically, wherever there's a productivity vacuum, it would seem hobbies rush in. So suddenly everybody's working less hours because they have to, and you can't go out and get a job because everything's shut down. So what do? Maybe you make bread because you're worried you might not be able to buy bread anymore. Yeah. And so
you learn how to cut your own hair or sew your own clothes.
Exactly. And then it raises this question, do we as a society value hobbies because of the real benefits, the personal benefits you get from, feeling like you accomplished something, and also like the material benefits, like you knitted yourself a sweater. Now you don't have to buy a sweater because you made one. Or do we just value the appearance of busyness? So do we care about the hobbies because of the hobbies, or do we care about the hobbies because they make us look busy? Which I think we can talk about on social media, everyone showing their final product of whatever they did. I baked this loaf of sourdough. I knitted this scarf. I did this needlepoint. And we're not seeing the beginning and the middle. We're only seeing the end, which leads to another nuanced layer, is that Ashley talks about in her video, that these younger generations raised on social media don't understand the process it takes. They just see they see everybody's beautiful end result on social media. They don't see all the ugly sweaters. They don't see all the messed up needlepoints. They don't see all the adult coloring book pages that got thrown away before the most beautiful one was taken a photo of and put out on social. So, that just continues to feed into our current comparing ourselves to everybody else. Yeah. And when you build up this wall, then it makes you less likely to go out and pursue something. That's how I feel, because I spend a lot of my time on social media, both for work and outside of work. I'm trying to cut down, but sometimes I might like to knit a scarf. I don't know. And then I just but it's going to be bad. And how do I prove that I spent this time doing this? And then I just don't do it.
That kind of reminds me of a parallel to what we were talked about in the AI episode, where rather than putting the thousands of hours in to learn how to make art. Yep. Because you don't see the process. You just see someone who spent thousands of hours and you see their beautiful illustration. Exactly. You're like, well, I can't do that, so I'm just going to have AI make it for me.
Yep, totally. And that was another point that Ashley Embers made. It's AI is filling this void too, because you can just use AI to make a piece of art instead of coloring it yourself. Because and you can call it a hobby, I guess, but it's not, because you're not doing it.
Also, if you're watching this on YouTube, I want to put a shout out to our friend Paul's logo on my water bottle for his Layer 2 Labs. Yeah. Paul's another really good friend from high school to now.
Right. And then, so getting back to this paradox of hobbies are meant to be leisure, but in the American culture, we moralize them into productivity because we want all of our time to be spent doing something, right? And we either feel shut out of it because we see on social media everybody doing their beautiful stuff, and we're like, I can't even bother. I'm gonna just spend my time consuming instead. And we'll get to the talk of inflation and being priced out of hobbies and everything. I'm just talking about this weird paradox of people thinking hobbies are work or not work, and how we spend our free time and what we think of our free time. Because in this Atlantic article that I talked about earlier, or that I named earlier and is linked in the show notes, we're, as Americans especially, very obsessed with having an experiential resume, talking about not just our work experience, but our life experience. And this woman, business professor at Boston University talked about people who measure their self-worth by their productivity are more inclined to spend their time seeking collectible experiences, so like trying to build up a resume to prove that you are interesting. And I think we see that on social media quite a bit. And she's also working on another piece of research called the Hobbies paradox. So it digs into the trouble with approaching hobbies as this lived experience resume, because you pursue these activities with the intention to de-stress and relax, she says. But because of these high expectations you have for excellence, for outperforming others, they actually lead to stress and frustration. And that's something that I personally identify with. I feel like I need to spend all my time productively. It's something I recognize, something I'm working on. But and people who believe that leisure is wasteful or unproductive enjoy their leisure less. So it makes hobbies like a chore instead of what they're supposed to be, a wonderfully fun way to spend your spare time. Yes.
This little section is making me think a lot about how, like, I don't know, probably starting from Gen X, and I feel like it's gotten progressively more and more intense each generation, where, like, when you're in high school, you have school, and then, like, it used to be, like, you'd join an after-school club because you're interested in, like, art or sport, but now it's, like, you need to have these things because you need to have this many extra activities and you need to be this good at them so you can put them on your college applications. And you need to, like, it's all about how it looks to other people, and, like, rather than I'm joining yearbook because that sounds fun.
Right, exactly. So getting back, exactly. And parenting of the generation that became obsessed with the extracurriculars is something we need to contend with as our generation comes up into parenthood.
Yeah.
I think generally this awareness is the first step in trying to find some sort of middle ground that
like
works.
All my middle school and high school clients who are on sports teams,
I'm sure.
6 days a week. You got to be there to run track at 8 a.m. on Saturday for the whole season.
Yeah. Yep.
When are you going to have time for anything else?
Right.
When are you going to do your homework? When are you going to rest?
That brings up another thing that I'm sure we do a whole episode about, but, like, why do we need to, like, make high school kids, like, track stars? That should be, like, a college thing. Like, set the foundations now, but why is this, like, 15-year-old having to do this every single day? I think we need to rethink these things. So, yes, bringing back the social media aspect, and I'm sorry, this episode's a little bit meandering because of how hard it is to wrap our minds around something that should be simple but isn't sometimes. Bringing back the social media aspect. It enables constant comparison of our lives to others, of our hobbies to others' hobbies, of our finished products to everybody else's finished products. Plus, the algorithm's going to reward anything with likes and views. And this extrinsic outside motivation instead of an intrinsic coming from within motivation, it breaks down the amount of satisfaction you feel in a hobby if you're just doing it for the likes versus doing it for yourself. And I feel like there's a whole generation that is finding hobbies or feeling not good enough for hobbies because of this social media instant gratification factor. So one Atlantic writer put it this way: extrinsic rewards can actually extinguish intrinsic rewards, leading us to enjoy our activities less. So hobbies should be among the most intrinsically motivating things to do. They are the work we choose when we could be doing anything else. Or not work, but the thing we choose to do when we could be doing literally anything else. But the validation we get from others online and from our culture for spending our free time in a productive, virtuous way can mess up that motivation. And not to mention the algorithm of social media will favor lifestyle content over news, politics, etc. So, I mean, which is fine. We should want to talk about our lifestyles and whatever on social media, but, like, it just gamifies the hobby space even more to, like, let me show you my cross stitch and got a bazillion likes. So who are you doing the hobby for? Your content or for yourself? I don't know. And the message that was initially brought in that post-industrial revolution boom is that a hobby, the boom of free time that is, a hobby is the best way to spend one's free time, is also a message from our, again, Puritan-based culture, because we are, especially in New England, that is
That's
and
like, yeah,
hard work and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps.
when you hear about how life is different, like when you go to the South or whatever,
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
'cause
This is
this
definitely
is where the
New England
Puritans are.
/ New York metro area lifestyle. Things you should value most in life based on that belief system is hard work, achievement, and productivity. So those aren't bad things, but are they more important than relationships, contemplation, and rest? No, so you have to balance out your hobbies with your work, with your rest. So how do we get this life that is balanced? Well, we're going to talk about that in a moment when we talk about hobbies and health. So we've talked about the definition of a hobby in relation to leisure and work, and it kind of falls in the middle because it's like a productive way to spend your leisure time. And we talked about just kind of all the forces at work to make us question hobbies and what is a hobby and having trouble to define it. Now we're going to talk about how hobbies can impact our health. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the benefits of hobbies so that we can really understand what's at stake here with this whole conversation before we move into other factors at play that are impacting how we spend our free time. And we will end with, again, feel like the hobbies will save us all. So let's talk about hobbies and health. We know that there's been a loneliness epidemic. It was labeled a public health crisis by the Surgeon General during the Biden administration. We also know that people in the U.S. are dying younger at an alarming rate compared to our other rich peer nations out there. So what does that mean? I think we can tie a lot of it to the healthcare industry as it stands today. We can talk about lifestyle, disease, really like diabetes and chronic conditions like that. We can talk about stress brought on by economic factors. And we can talk about isolation and loneliness and lack of community, leading to more depression and other comorbidities that lead to shorter lifespans that we don't see being as big of a problem in our peer nations that have social safety nets woven into their existence. So I do want to just set the scene about how terrible life is today. It is and it isn't, but just think about, I found an article that was about how millennials are dying at a faster rate, or at a higher rate than they are in other countries. So people our age are dying more than they are in other countries at our age. And that article is behind a paywall, so I didn't read the whole article, but I did find a Reddit thread.
You don't have super secret ways to getting around it?
Yeah.
I'll share with you a website.
Okay, great, thank you.
No,
I did
won't.
find
Wait,
it.
wait. Nothing illegal.
I found discussion about the article on Reddit, and the article will be linked in the show notes. You can read it if you want. But one Reddit comment that I saw that I thought kind of speaks to everything was, in my opinion, it's a multi-factor problem, but millennials have been at the receiving end of decreases in social assistance and the government no longer working to help the average person. I was commenting on drug overdoses below and realized the increased amount of work Canada has done to reduce fentanyl deaths compared with the U.S. In my opinion, this is because the Canadian taxpayer is responsible for covering medical costs when someone does overdose, so therefore the government has an incentive to reduce the chances someone has a very expensive hospital visit. In comparison, the U.S. doesn't have the social safety net backstop that gives incentive for the government to try to fix problems for citizens.
That's so interesting, because we're paying our own hospital bills, so the government doesn't have to try to make it less expensive.
Right, and I forgot to say earlier, loneliness, isolation, turning to alcohol and drugs is also a big situation for millennials, and that is something that I think reached a peak or close to it during COVID, but the original article about the death rate said that this wasn't a COVID era explosion. It had been creeping up before that.
Well, look at liquor stores were kept open during COVID so that the hospitals had room and didn't have to deal with withdrawal symptoms.
Yes, exactly. And then another Reddit person said this. So having actually read the article, the reason the authors imply appears to be a constellation of factors that includes reduced and continually declining socioeconomic opportunities, experiential trauma, lack of affordable health care throughout their lives, resulting in acute and chronic undercare, and deaths of despair, suicide, alcoholism, and drug overdoses. Those are the unique elements that separate millennials from other American cohorts, and that also experience additional deaths due to car accidents, gun deaths, and so on. It's likely to worsen over time, this trend, because these issues are unlikely to be addressed in our current landscape. And then finally, one person said every day, he was talking about how his salary has increased dramatically, lived in the same house, driven the same or similar vehicles, gotten better at budgeting, eating out less, etc. But he has less discretionary income because his electricity bill has tripled. His insurance has gone up by 50% on his car and his home, even though he has no accidents or claims. Groceries have increased by 75%. My internet and cell phone have increased by 30%. I drive a similar vehicle that costs 50% more now than the last car I bought. I have 2 kids, and all the necessities for them have increased by about 100%. It's insane. By all outward appearances, I've made it. Fantastic career that pays well. Amazing family. A house on 1 acre in a nice neighborhood with super low interest rate. I don't spend frivolously often. I'm not frugal, but I live reasonably. I wake up in a panic over finances almost every night. I haven't had enough discretionary income to contribute to my 401k in 3 years. If I lose my job, I'm absolutely screwed. Unemployment insurance covers less than 50% of my salary, and severance packages are a joke. Every day I feel like I'm going to have a heart attack from the stress. It's brutal, and I have it really good, and I'm lucky as hell. Talk to my friends and peers. We're all struggling. It's anecdotal, and maybe our parents and grandparents felt the same at this age. No, they didn't. But there is no room to breathe in the U.S. There's no rest. Vacation is never vacation, and that's even if you have a job that has PTO. So why am I painting this dark picture? Because this is a landscape that has produced an every man for himself mentality that I think is only going to be combated through community, and what creates community that crosses all political spectrums better than a hobby.
Yeah.
So, in making this argument, let's talk really quickly about the individual benefits of having a hobby. So we alluded to them a little bit earlier, but hobbies can boost your confidence by fostering a feeling of accomplishment. You knit a scarf, your garden is growing, you share a loaf of sourdough with your friends. You can't help but feel pride that you finished something you started. They can also reduce stress, improve optimism, and even ease symptoms of depression, because being engaged in an activity like that can reduce cortisol, which is the stress hormone. And then if you add like a physical endeavor on top of it, so if like your hobby is hiking, you're not only lowering the stress hormone, but you're increasing endorphins, which help you feel happy. They bring
Happy people just don't kill their husbands.
Yeah, happy people do not kill their husbands. So hobbies bring you joy, they energize you, and offer a mental boost when you're doing them for yourself. We have to make that clear. We really need to start separating the social media from real life, people. You gotta put down the phone, you gotta do things for yourself. Easier said than done, I know, but I'm just putting it out there because I can't say enough that we are not in a good place in the United States of America, and there are so many factors at play, and I'm sorry that I'm turning this, what should be a light topic, into something dark.
But it never is.
But I just want you to know, because I'm telling you the secret. The secret to saving the world is hobbies, or saving the U.S. is hobbies. I'm telling you. So the best hobbies for your mental health combine that physical and mental stimulation, like I just said. So a fun dance class, rock climbing, yoga, tai chi. But even if you're not up for something physical, like maybe you're like recovering from surgery and you're gotta stick home and you're sad because you can't do everything that you used to do, that's all right. Engage in something mentally stimulating also helps, because variety and learning something new every day is one of the best things you could do for your brain. So buy that book of New York Times crosswords. That'll keep you busy for a long time.
Yeah.
It gets you thinking, gets you out of your present moment, focused, and not scrolling your phone. You want those hands-on, tactile, immersive hobbies that will help you stay focused and stay present. And all this I just read is from an article on Real Simple called Having Hobbies Can Really Boost Your Well-Being, and here's how to find one you love. We will end the episode with some tips and tricks to finding a hobby that you will love. So
Nice.
Get back to that in a minute. But this article was based on a survey that was sent out about what people's hobbies are, and 20% of respondents said they don't have a hobby, or they didn't think they had a hobby. In researching this, the writer talked to a psychologist who said, one of the biggest struggles I've found when working with clients is that they don't know how to carve out free time in their schedules and or don't spend their free time doing things that fill their mental health and well-being buckets. So there's many reasons for this. We're overworked, underpaid, childcare is an issue. It's everything that describes the American existence right now. We're just busy all the time, and that's just what we value.
Yeah, your free time spent cooking dinner and vacuuming. And...
Yeah, exactly. And we're not like told to carve out free time. I think during COVID there was a big movement of self-care and everything, but I don't think that made it out of COVID, that movement, especially now with all the return to the office mandates.
Just cutting more free time off because now you have to commute.
Exactly. So, and then people are getting priced out of hobbies, which we'll talk about in the next section. But again, being aware of this, taking a step back from your schedule and saying, where can I reasonably find some time to just like do one little thing a week and build from there? That would be a good first step. And we will get back to that. So now I want to get back to hobbies. We talked about the individual benefits, but the benefits that kind of can extrapolate from there are that hobbies can create third spaces that foster community. So there is a book called Bowling Alone by Robert Putnam, and he was a researcher who looked at the decline in bowling leagues in America. He saw this as like people are choosing to spend their free time not in bowling leagues, like doing probably things more individual or just with their family. And he saw that this would have a bad impact on civic engagement when people are not going out to the Monday night bowling league anymore and getting out and meeting people and bonding over bowling. And he was like spot on that it coincided with this decline in like civic engagement and getting involved in your town and with your neighbors and volunteering. Like he saw this through the lens of the decline of bowling leagues in America, and it ended up like
that
telling
makes a
the future.
Sense. Yeah.
So, and I bring this up because it came up in all the hobbies research that I did, and also in Emily Amick, aka Instagram's Emily in Your Phone, wrote a book about getting engaged in your community, and she cited this too, which is where I first saw it. So a bowling alley doing a league was like a third space. Being like work is a space, home is a space, church is a space. I guess church is a third space, but like a third space where you bond over a particular interest. You're not forced to be there for family or whatever.
And you're not there just to consume and spend money.
You're not there just to consume. Well, like you probably paid for the bowling league, but like that's
not like a
sunk
store.
cost. You're not going to a coffee shop and buying coffee. You're not going to the brewery and buying beer.
If you're spending money, it's on an activity.
Yes, exactly. That you're doing with other people who also like that activity and probably come from different backgrounds and whatever. That decline of the third space and all that he saw as like portending the very polarized political landscape we're in today, and lack of like civic engagement and even just like understanding how things work in society. And you listen to this amazing podcast. It's called the Niche to Meet You podcast, and it's all about hobbies, but this particular episode was called Every Hobby Has a Story. And they really honed in on the third space and community aspect that is generally missing from the conversation, but there are pockets of hope here, because there are people who have hobbies. Like think of people who go to Renaissance fairs, and like that's a whole 3-day weekend of meeting your people.
Like I live above a game place. Yeah. It's like they do have a store where you can go and buy games, but like people like you pay $10 and you go there with a group of friends
to play your
rent
games.
A room
That's
there
a
and you play games.
That's a great
they're not
hobby.
going there just to consume, they're going there to play games.
That's a
and
fantastic hobby and a wonderful third space. So this particular episode talked about people who do their hobbies on the road and like meet other people and like foster those third spaces and go out of the way to do that. So some of the people that they interviewed for this episode, or it was a collection of old episodes that they put together into this anthology. But anyway, there was a cop who does dog agility with her dog, and she said it helped relieve stress because she has a super stressful job, obviously, because they focus on something else. Like this dog agility stuff, you go to like, you take it out on the road and you go to contests and whatever. It's like a big deal. And then there was a veterinarian who does ultra marathoning, and he says it takes him out of his head because veterinarians apparently have like a high rate of suicide, which I had no idea.
Really?
Because it's such a stressful job, and veterinary clinics are not well funded.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Like you would think they make like comparable incomes to like doctors. No, they don't.
No. And then also like everything that goes with actually running a clinic is not well funded. So there's so much stress with that and the financials, and doing this ultra marathon prep and training gets him outside of that space that he deals with in his 9 to 5, which we know a vet is not 9 to 5. But hobbies help us like cope and learn and channel what's known as tragic optimism, which is the idea that yes, there are terrible things going on in the world, but it's okay and you can still find joy in your life. That is based on a line of thinking that came from a Holocaust survivor, Viktor Frankl. He's the one who coined the tragic optimism. And tragic optimism is the flip side of toxic positivity that we saw in COVID, where people were kind of like, well, I can see the bright side of things, and you're weak for not seeing that lonely, like, I don't know, that being home all the time is actually good. Like, I don't know. Tragic optimism is having the nuance in your mind to embrace the joy while also acknowledging the sadness in the world. And if more people were open to that kind of thinking, it would lead the way towards more empathy and connection. So another person, or several people that they interviewed for this episode, was members of the International Real Bearded Santa's Board or something like that. And it's people who volunteer their time as Santa in their communities, and they are across the whole spectrum of socioeconomic status, race, etc. And they are committed to channeling the joy of Christmas and everywhere. And they talk to like the traditional Santas, they talk to black Santas, they talk to a Jewish Santa in Israel. Like,
really?
Yeah. And it was just such a wonderful thing, and it's just all about like these people, they like go beyond playing the mall Santa, they like go out into the community, like being Santa is their hobby, and it's like just this wonderful happy thing. But one of the guys was like at the on Christmas Eve, when after I finished my final thing, I like just sit on my couch and weep for hours because of all the like emotion that you hold being the Santa who has to deliver joy to poor children or children in the hospital, etc. But really the basis of that was community. These Santas are building community, channeling it through Christmas spirit. And it was just so beautiful. And the last line that the podcast host made was, hobbies are delighting in things so much that you want to share them with others. This is being human. It's community, it's connection, and it's belonging. In a time of isolation and loneliness, this is why the hobby matters. We're meeting one another in the gaps and fostering understanding. And maybe hobbies can change the world, which is where I got that from. So I really want to quickly talk about granny hobbies as a thing in the news right now. Not really in the news, but I hope everybody's enjoying this bebopping all over the place, because I am all over the place right now. Just, take it with a grain of salt. Come back and rewind and go back to your favorite part. I don't know. And Granny Hobbies was an interesting response I saw to Taylor Swift's engagement, because people were freaking out that they're like, oh no, she's going to become a trad wife now because she's getting married. And then some other response I saw was like, Taylor will never be a trad wife because she's a granny hobbyist. And granny hobbyists opened up a whole thing. Yeah. Apparently there's a whole movement of grandma hobbies. Where
like needlepoint and stuff?
Where you are, these are like the very much like the inwardly productive, but you can find community in knitting and whatever. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. But grandma hobbies, I'm pointing out as a thing on the rise. Knitting, homemade jam, baking, dinners from scratch, handwriting cards and letters, slow cooking, needlepoint, playing mahjong, making flower crowns, crochet. These are all just like hobbies that help you just take a step back, and I don't think they have to be grandma or granny hobbies, and apparently Taylor Swift makes bread. I don't remember which one she did, but they were like, Taylor Swift's in her grandma era. She's not a trad wife. So now we're pitting trad wives against grandmas now. Anyway, ideas for hobbies. And you know what?
When I see hobbies, I keep thinking it says hobbits.
I know, me too.
Like,
Well, that's joyful too. Yeah. We just talked about how we're kind of in like we could be doing better as a country and as a nation, and we know what we need to
That's
do.
That's a really kind way of saying
it. And we really, it all comes down to crossing the bridges of polarization and working together to make the America that will support everybody. Rising tide lifts all boats. So how do we do that? And it's community. What is one really great way to foster community? Hobbies. So let's talk a little bit about hobbies, culture, and identities. So we want hobbies, right? Making the case that the hobbies are the thing that are going to save us all. They are going to create community. They're going to help us see each other for our interests and the things that we love instead of who we voted for or the policies that we support, because guess what? We can all learn and evolve even when we've made mistakes in the past. Everyone can. Most people, not everybody. And we're gonna use the hobbies as the starting point, the foundation. But there are barriers to hobbying that we need to talk about, and one of the biggest ones is the cost of living that we've talked about, pricing people out of hobbies. So this particular article I looked to when I was researching this angle was another Atlantic article, because I subscribe to the Atlantic now. My libtard transformation is complete. So Tyler Austin Harper, a writer for the Atlantic, wrote the story, What We Lose When We're Priced Out of Hobbies. So when Tyler Austin Harper was young, he started shooting clays, which is like golf, but simulated hunting or something, where you're like on a course and you take time and you shoot the clays of ducks or whatever, I don't know. But, and there were an eclectic crew of regulars who took him under his wing, a gruff and heavily scarred but charming former Navy SEAL, a wealthy couple, an amateur snake handler, and people from all walks of life, right? And he was just like a kid, and they took him under his wing. Obviously, this is the type of hobby that absolutely gets more expensive because they only want a certain type of people doing it. And everything that comes with it, like whatever, like the clay itself, the clay materials got more expensive.
The bullets and the guns.
The bullets and the guns got more expensive. Yeah, he said like as a kid, it cost him like $240 a month because he did it every week, and it was like $60 a week, and he could earn it by working weekends, and like that's what he spent his money on because he was 12. Like he worked wherever on the weekends, but like now he can't do it.
Yeah.
He can't add that to his life because it costs like way more, and he has bills. And
even like $240 a month now, people can't.
Oh
really
yeah,
afford.
100%. Like the fact that he could, as a kid, make that money working at the ice cream shop or whatever. I don't know. Yeah. But so hobby inflation is going to be seen, or is being seen, in things like that are already expensive, like golf, skiing, indoor climbing, mountain biking, photography, but then also like knitting and tabletop games. And if we're going to count going to the theater, which I don't, but theater going is obviously more expensive. There's articles and forums popping up everywhere. Why is insert hobby so expensive now? Because it is. You're losing like this way to spend your free time. Maybe you have to find a less expensive version of it, or just a different hobby altogether. But not only that, we see that it's pricing us out of what have I been talking about, these third spaces and this community based on interest. So according to Gary Allen Fine, a sociologist that the writer quoted, hobbies create these social worlds that have an ideology of openness and a supportive infrastructure, because you're coming together to talk about something you love, and maybe somebody's just getting started, and like you get the mentors, they come in and be like, listen to me and my advice because I've been shooting clays for 150 years, so do it this way, and blah blah blah. People you want to see people succeed at something that you love to do.
Yeah.
You know, you want to see the newcomer learn, and it gives you pleasure to help somebody else out doing something you love because you're uniting over that one thing. So, in other words, hobbies can produce communities where, because the hobby itself takes top priority, the participants' social or cultural differences become less important. Hobby inflation, understood in this light, is about much more than price hikes. It's about the shrinking and possible disappearance of opportunities for people from different backgrounds to get to know one another. The effect is that many hobbies that were once accessible to the working and middle class are effectively out of reach for all but the rich. Even hobbies like fishing. Think of fishing. Who do you think of when people go fishing? You think of like your grandpa just trudging down after a shift at the factory to go fish, or before. And he's just like a middle class guy, probably was poor, pulled himself up or whatever, got his manufacturing job post World War II, supported his family, fishes. That doesn't exist anymore.
All the sort of hobbies that I want to do that include community, I can't afford.
Right.
Like, I can't take a ballet class.
I had to
even
stop
though there's
doing
a
Orange
school
Theory.
right around the corner from me that holds them for adults.
Yeah.
And it's right there, and I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
Or like,
right.
there's a bike club in my neighborhood, you know, but I gotta get my bike fixed.
Yeah,
And
exactly. And
I don't know, it's just
for
like
me,
all this money.
Yeah. For me to like whine about Orange Theory is expensive. There was a time before children where I had the funds and I went enough to justify it, and I loved it, and I had friends and all that. Now I can't justify it for many reasons. One, it is too expensive. Two, I don't have time to justify the expense.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, it's gonna take a while, but I do not have the disposable income right now, so it doesn't matter. But anyway, hobby inflation is likely to register real social, political, and economic consequences, which we just talked about with the bowling alone. We see the decline in these groups, adventures, I guess, group settings over a shared interest as having political and social consequences, not only because hobbies are good for the well-being, as we talked about, but they also connect people, help them make new friends, and bring them into contact with people whom, by virtue of age, race, or socioeconomic circumstance, you might have not had the occasion to meet otherwise. And we have to make decisions about how we're going to spend our time, because we don't have a lot of free time, and also how we're going to spend our money, because we don't have a lot of money. And if you have to, like, take the spending down a notch, like, you're probably just going to be like, I need to spend more time at home. I can't go out.
Yeah.
And then even if you're with family and maybe you don't feel, like, lonely per se, you're not connecting with other people. It's like terrible. So bottom line, a society where communal leisure is more and more unattainable is one that will also likely become lonelier, which we already see.
Actually,
and more intolerant of difference, which we also see.
You just made me think of like another thing that I used to like to do is walk down the street to this little like live music venue, and I would go there like every couple of weeks and go see a show just by myself and like talk to the people who are there.
Yeah.
And that's out of my budget now.
All right, so now I talked about the community and the social, economic, and political fallout. Well, let me finally get to the one article that made me think about this in the whole first place, and the one that also made me sign up for The Atlantic, which was a piece called Democrats Need More Hobbies by David Litt. And I first saw it on Instagram by a creator that I really like, who's all about like bridging the divide and big tent politics and all that as a means to move progressive agendas forward, but like meeting people where they are and so on and so forth. Her name is @Amanda'sMildTakes. I highly suggest you follow her. But anyway, she shared it, and she was like, to all the people who only read the headline and freaked out, I would suggest you read the whole article. And I was like, ooh, what does this article say? So it's written by one of Obama's former speechwriters. Shout out to my husband who told me to stop talking about Obama on this podcast. I will not.
Why do you say that?
He said, he's like, not everybody loves Obama the way you do. I was like, well, I mean, I think people like know who I am. Put it aside.
You're allowed to talk about what you like.
And
like I said in the last episode, we make the rules.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sorry, but this is relevant to the conversation. He was a speechwriter for Obama, and he says, for most of my adult life, I worked in and around Democratic politics. My hobby was work. I think we can all identify with that at some point. In 2022, not peak COVID, but afterwards, he started taking surf lessons and he got hooked. He took a trip in 2023 to an outdoor wave pool in Waco, Texas. And he says if you want to meet the voters who swung toward Donald Trump and put him back in the White House, you could do worse than a hot tub at this place. Mm-hmm. And He said he was there with his pickup truck driving Joe Rogan's superfan brother-in-law, and from the moment they got there, his brother-in-law could not have felt more at home, and he, the writer, could not have felt more out of place. He couldn't figure out why exactly, but then he developed a theory. The great divide is that I constantly think about politics and they do not. So he said surf trips, the two he took are hardly statistically significant, but his research confirmed his hunch. Democrats are the party of political junkies, and Republicans are the people, not like the people who are actually in power and calling the shots, but people who identify as conservative or not political are the people who would rather think about anything else. And there are more of the latter, the people who would rather think about anything else, than of the super engaged, interested people. We saw this play out. The more engaged, interested in politics people overwhelmingly voted for Harris and so on. And he says the best hope for defeating authoritarianism remains the ballot box, and to win elections, Democrats or independents, whoever, have to win back at least some of the voters who have no interest in becoming politically engaged. And I'm not saying that's the right thing to be, but how do we meet those people where they are? Exactly. The party is going to need another way to reach people, and perhaps that's through activities and hobbies than through politics. Democrats used to be cooler. Bill Clinton played the sax. Obama played pickup basketball, and he was pretty good at it. Now we got football players mimicking, in a loving way, Trump's stupid dance moves because they think he's cool. And that is a terrible reflection of how far the Democratic Party has fallen. So instead of focusing on making politics fun, which you could see in the Democratic National Convention this year, that was cool and it was way better than the Republican National Convention. There were celebrities, it was awesome, but that made politics fun, not just having fun and connecting with people.
Well, and there was that disconnect because people who were in a different socioeconomic class from the celebrities, that has nothing to do with me.
Exactly. So they were focusing on this narrow set of something to make that they made fun into fun, but it didn't answer all the problems. And we saw with Biden, he was old, he had a limited schedule, so you just didn't really see him out and about doing stuff. And it made him even more remote than he already was. Interestingly, Kamala Harris had a YouTube cooking show before she became vice president, and they made her stop because they're this is stupid, don't do it. And people are going to think you're unserious. Yeah. Imagine if she kept up that YouTube cooking show and everybody's who doesn't like food?
Show, yeah.
And everyone loves a cooking show. Yeah. Look at the Great British Bake Off and a whole network based on home decor and cooking and whatever. There's two networks. There's a food network and a home decor network.
A smart TV that has all those channels.
Yeah.
I have mine on Bon Appetit.
Yeah.
When I turn on the TV, if it's something good, I just don't put on Netflix or whatever, and I just watch them making whatever they're doing.
Anyway, we've just and now it's okay, I don't know. So we've just got this whole thing, and we have only so much time to really make these inroads, and we don't have to ask the leaders of the party to do it, or even people who identify as Democrats, just people who care. Think about in your life where you're connecting with other people. Is it through your hobbies? Probably. And you don't have to go guns blazing talking about abortion to your next knitting club meeting, but maybe you just casually bring up a story you saw on the news and you talk about it. And literally that's it, baby steps.
Or literally just being exposed to different people that are different from you. The little old lady goes to her knitting club, and she's a little white lady, and there's I don't know, a black woman there.
Yeah.
And she realizes, oh, we aren't that different.
Exactly. Because one thing that this writer pointed out was we think about the most likely presidential nominees on the Democrat side are AOC, Pete Buttigieg. Well, this was written before Gavin Newsom started destroying Trump, etc. But we don't what do they do in their free time? We don't know. They go on podcasts and talk about Trump. So I appreciate that, but that's my hobby, honestly, which I don't want it to be. I just want to be a normal, engaged citizen who has other things going on.
It's annoying to have to be so engaged.
Yes, it is annoying, but if you can stomach it and also weave in the hobbies. Like, that's how I'm trying to, like, conduct my life. But, like, I mean, what does Pete Buttigieg do? I don't know. I bet he does cool stuff. We just don't see it, because right now what we're demanding from him is to be a voice against Trump. It's like, not really a great space to be in, because it is, but it isn't. Because, yes, you're rallying the people who care, but you're just, like, tuning out the people who are just like, oh, I just want to, like, live. Yeah. And anyway, I don't know the answer. All I know is, like, I'm telling you what I think, because I really care, and I really think the hobbies are going to save us. Yeah. and then people are always like, oh, we need a Joe Rogan of the left, but that's a dumb premise, because Joe Rogan was never of the right. He's just this guy who was a mixed martial arts color commentator who talked about all of his crazy stuff, and you could bucket him into the right for sure, but he didn't ask to be there. And my problem with podcasters like him is that they bring on guests and they just let them talk. And if you have any journalistic training at all, you would know when to push back. And he doesn't, because he's just a stupid podcast. Like,
and
he's
letting
like
everyone have the same pedestal.
Yep, exactly.
Whether they know what they're talking about or not.
Yeah. I didn't listen to the stupid vaccine stuff and all that, but my guess is what happened is he let wackadoodles on his show, and then he didn't push back against them, because he's not a journalist. And I'm not saying that that's acceptable or an excuse. I'm just saying, like, we have created this podcast system and landscape where now it's, like, where we get lots of our news from. And regular people who don't think about this every day, don't think, Joe Rogan's not a journalist. He really should have pushed back on that weirdo vaccine guy. And no, they're just like, oh, I heard this on Joe Rogan. Yeah. Have you heard about it?
He wouldn't steer me wrong.
He wouldn't steer me wrong, because I love Joe Rogan, and he's cool. And apparently he went, like, more than 1,100 episodes before his first interview with an elected official. And even now, he has, like, less than 20 episodes with any political people on it. He just talks about, like, whatever. And, again, not taking him off the hot seat, he should understand the platform he has and use it more responsibly. But I don't know if he knows how.
Well, and that's the thing with podcasts. It's like, when you're on the news, you have a responsibility.
Yes, and you know that, and you were trained. Yeah, exactly. So,
not to say that the news hasn't fucked things up too.
No.
But.
So David Litt, the writer of the Atlantic writer, his whole thing is just like, stop trying to, like, create this one person that we're gonna, like, pin all our hopes and dreams on, but, like, have some fun, show that you do stuff, and reach people that way, and then build, like, an ecosystem. We don't, like, go on Joe Rogan. He would love, like, there's, like, this whole thing about what happened with why Kamala Harris didn't go on it, and it, like, wasn't entirely his fault. It was, like, scheduling snafu, and like, he should have made sure she was on, because of that's what you do when you're a media organization. But he, you know, we're learning from these things that we set up. So let's close out. I want to put one more idea into your head with this woman I read on Substack. She used to be, like, a corporate world woman. She became a professor because I think she wanted to go into education, but also she wanted the life of having summers off and, like, a less corporate driven schedule. She sought that out because she wanted more free time in her life. She's a mom, she has older kids. Her name's Marina Cooley. She's on Substack. Her Substack's called Professor Off Duty, and she talks about her hobbies and all that. So for school, I forgot what she teaches, but I think communication, actually. She takes her students to Denmark, and they learn about Danish culture, and in Danish culture, you don't ask, and I think this is, like, a European thing in general, too, but you don't ask, what do you do? Like, when you meet somebody, what do you ask? What do you do for a living, right? You ask, what do you do for fun, or what do you do what's your hobby? Like, that's, like, what you ask to get to know a person. So, like, what if we all did that instead of asking what everyone's jobs were? Like, what are your hobbies? What do you do for fun? So she says, do that, and, like, try to live a life where you can answer that question and ask that question. And she did a thing for her Instagram where she, like, tried 17 hobbies in 1 year, and it was, like, a whole project. And so she just talks about, like, what she learned from that, and I'm just gonna tell you what she learned from that, and then I'm going to give you a couple of tips for how to find your own hobbies. Her takeaways from her million hobbies were: hobbies and scrolling don't mix. So she didn't do a single thing that allowed time for her to scroll on her phone. It's a natural antidote for screen time, and that's something we should think about when we're trying to raise a new generation of children that aren't addicted to their screens and help the children who already are. Some hobbies are not right now hobbies. Bookmark your joy for later. If you're in a season of life like I am, where I just don't have time, like maybe I'm not going to, like, I don't know, turn my garage into an art studio or whatever. But maybe in the future, when I'm an empty nester, it's something I might pursue. Mm-hmm. So some things are expensive or require too much equipment, and you might just not be able to make it work right now, and that's okay. If it sparked an interest, just put it on the back burner. One person's hobby is another person's work, which I thought was really cool. She said, as a mom of 3, she does not like to bake or cook. It feels forced upon her. But for a student that she worked with, that was her way to get away from homework, like baking cookies or whatever.
I do love cooking.
Yeah, I like cooking, but sometimes it does feel like a chore. Don't stereotype a hobby as being for introverts. Almost any hobby, even embroidery or baking, can become social. So find your hobby and you'll find your people, which is what I've been saying this whole time. Americans are more interesting than you think. Yeah. Even you Gen Z peeps who think it's cringe to try hobbies, I implore you to get out of that mindset. I know it's hard. You can come talk to me if you need help. But there are so many headlines about the loneliness epidemic in America, she says. But I'll tell you who isn't lonely: the hobbyists that I spent time with. Each of them has a community built around their hobby, and they are forming relationships and identities outside of work. And she says, don't wait until you have more time, more balance, etc. Balance and carving out time come with finding the hobby. So get the hobby, and then you're going to be naturally forced to define your boundaries as a worker and as a parent and as an individual. I mean, sure, easier said than done, but like, if you're a mom or whatever and you're like just reached your boiling point, like tell your partner, I need Wednesday nights for an hour to go to yoga. Yeah. I'm sure they would be happy to do that. Yeah. I'll take over bedtime on Wednesday nights. You go to yoga. You just have to have, maybe you think they won't be supportive because they're busy and everything too, but trust me, deep down we all want each other to be happy. And so if you're like, oh my gosh, this is great, but like I don't even know where to start. Well, let me tell you from that real simple article I shared earlier, how to find a new hobby. Brainstorm. You could do it yourself or with your friends and families. Allow your mind to wander. What do you like to do, or what have you always wanted to do? Tap into your childhood. What did you like to do as a kid? Mm-hmm. What was something that you just did for hours on end? Turn to an assessment. You can look up like a personality assessment, an interest assessment, or whatever that can help you. It kind of can help you with the brainstorming, set you on the right path. All right, narrow down your list. If you have a bunch, narrow it down to 5 that are actually doable, and from that 5, identify the one that you're most excited about to start with. You can't just like start all doing 10 hobbies. It's just unrealistic. Be mindful of your schedule. Again, you have to be realistic, otherwise you're going to get discouraged. And then let go of perfectionism, which is my biggest barrier.
That's the hardest part.
Yep. As you start out, it doesn't matter if you're not good as long as you like it. New things take time to learn. You will get good if you like it enough and you keep doing it. Or it doesn't even matter. You will just like what you do, and it doesn't matter if it's good or not. So I just want to end with, we could all use a little hobby joy in our life. If you have a hobby, talk about it with your friends. Talk about it with people at work. You don't know who you're going to open a door for, who might be needing that permission to find a little joy and community. And I really do think if we get this story out there, that we can see some really good and positive progress. So for me, what am I making time for this week? I'm going to do that brainstorming and figure out a hobby.
Now that I'm thinking of it, like this last week, I haven't really made time for anything. It's been a whirlwind of a week. But I think for this coming week, maybe I'll make time and just do some drawing in a sketchbook.
Yeah, I love that. All right. Well, this has been the aptly named Who Has Time for This podcast, but we're going to make time for our hobbies.
Yay!
It's really important. All righty. Goodbye.